Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi everyone, my name's Molly. I'm an alcoholic. I am really grateful I was asked to speak here. I've been sober, if I don't drink, 33 years next month. And thank you. And I've been coming to these almost all of my sobriety. At one time it was in Palm Springs, but it was the same feeling. And I remember I was asked to be a hostess at my first roundup. And they called the hostesses meeting at 10 that evening. Gail Wilson was in charge. And I thought to myself, I won't be able to be there, I'll be drunk. And then I remembered, oh, no, I don't drink anymore. And so I got to this hostesses meeting, and there were maybe 20, nice-looking hostesses, and I got in there, and I just burst out crying. I thought, my God, I'm going to be stuck with these people my whole life. And then I turned it around, and I thought, I'm going to be stuck with these people all my whole life, so get to know some of them. Stop thinking you're so special. And it was the beginning of this journey. I've always believed there are three ways to work the program. One is an intellectual way, where you read the big book and go to big book study meetings. Two is a spiritual way. And I remember once when I was very new, my mother had given me a leather coat, and I was at a meeting, and a drunk poured his coffee on my coat. And I didn't know if I was supposed to thank God. Maybe it was some sort of message written in the stain, or I didn't know what to feel. I turned to my sponsor. I said, I don't know what I feel. She said, you're mad. So then I went, turned right to him. But the third way is action. And I truly believe that's what saved me. I believe that if I don't stay actively involved in AA, I will go out and drink again. One time I was speaking at a meeting about 2 weeks ago in New York, and I got in a really tough situation with some drunks, and I thought, well, that doesn't, and then I thought, no, you're speaking tomorrow. Don't drink. So, that's always there to save us when we get into trouble. Longevity helps because we learn here the tips. I've always thought you come to these roundups and everything that's been bothering you, any problem you're having, is answered here. And I still believe that. And already I've been here such a short time. We got here last night, but I've seen the answers. I had a dream last night that a baby asked me how I greet people. She said she was very shy. This was in my dream. And I said, you go up and you shake hands, and then you say something sort of revealing about yourself, and the person will reveal back, and you've got a dialogue going. So I went in to have coffee this morning, and I said, I'm from Beverly Hills. And the woman said, I've never been to Beverly Hills. And I said, that's what I just had the dream about. And she thought I was nuts, but it's kind of like you're answered here. Anyway, I was a nice girl from a nice family in Los Angeles. I drank from the get-go. I was and still am an art dealer, and at that time, art dealers were all, in my opinion, alcoholics or some major thing wrong. But anyway, the last night of my drinking, I was living in a Beverly Hills post office, but it was truly the dog patch of Beverly Hills, a street called Yoakum Drive. My car had been taken away for drunken driving. My two children were afraid of me. They actually slept, my daughter with a bottle under her bed, she wasn't drinking, but a bottle in case I came in. It was really bad. I'd lost my license. I'd been in jail several times for drinking. And I was in a real mess. And my neighbor across the street called, and he was having a dinner party. And he said, Molly, could you cook a casserole over there and bring it over? He said, my stove is broken, and I can't cook the casserole. And I said, sure, Curtis. And he said, Molly, please don't drink when you're here. And I said, Curtis, you make it sound like I'm an alcoholic. And I couldn't see through the TV through the phone like we can today, but I could just imagine him rolling his eyes. And he said, Molly, last time you were here, you set fire to my house. So I thought he's really desperate for somebody to help him, but also I'm not going to argue about the drinking. So anyway, I took his little tuna surprise over that he had brought in the afternoon. I heated it for him, and I took him over to his party. And there were about 20 guests. They were in the living room. They were just about ready to go in to have dinner. And he said, have one glass of wine and let yourself out. He didn't even want me there for dinner. You know, I thought I was too pretty, but it was because he did not want me there. Anyway, he said, have one glass of wine, let yourself out. So he gave me a glass of wine, and all the guests went into the dining room, left me alone. And once I'd had that glass of wine, I could not get out of that room till I drank everything. All the leftover drinks on the coffee table, went right over to the little bar and just started downing drinks. And it never, ever occurred to me until that day that once I started the cycle, I could not stop. If I'd gotten out of there without having to have a drink, or if he hadn't offered me, maybe I wouldn't even be here today. But anyway, I could not stop, and it scared me to such an extent, despite all of the horrible accidents and things, this feeling that I couldn't stop scared me, and I went home and drank everything in the house, and the next morning called AA. The miracles began to happen. Our theme today is, as you all know, your own house is in order. When I got sober, I had 2 small children. I was divorced. My car was wrecked. I had no license. I had to take a bus to work. I absolutely, or have somebody drive me, I absolutely could not function. I had a housekeeper who would take care of my children, thank God, and would sort of take care of the house in a scattered fashion. But I had no idea how to do it myself. So the first thing I did was I stopped having a housekeeper, took care of it myself. The sheets I'd slept on, you know, when she wasn't around, I'd blow my nose on. I mean, I had no idea of cleanliness. It was just, I see somebody nodding, so you've been through it too. I had no idea how to take care of myself. I had to learn how to clean. I had to learn how to be a listener to my children. I had to learn to, when people called me on the phone, not just hang up. I used to, when I was drinking, if somebody would call and ask me someplace, I'd say yes, and then somebody else would call and ask me someplace if it was a better offer, I'd say yes. Somebody called, better offer, I'd say yes, and then I would feel so guilty I'd pass out. So the lucky one that got me, you know, would find me on the floor. So I had to learn all of that, and I learned that here. My first sponsor was Jeannie J., who's no longer here, but a lot of you knew her. She was bigger than life. Nick, her husband, is still very active, but she knew exactly how to reach in to somebody like me and pull out all this junk, all of this hidden stuff I was living with, and get me to start talking about how insecure I felt. Not only about me, but about the way I'd raised my children, the harm I'd done to other people without even thinking, and little by little, I began to get better. I remember the first thing she said to me was, never say no to an AA request. And I was at Roxbury Park one night. A man came over and said, would you pose for an Olga Bra ad? I was so thrilled. I had never considered myself particularly glamorous. Oh my God, it was the highlight of my life. And I ran to Jeannie and I said, he just asked me to pose for a bra ad. She said, that's not an AA request. She taught me how to date. I was divorced. I had no idea how to date. I mean, you know, you thought you'd go out with some AA, you'd talk AA all night, you'd go home, and then you'd say the Lord's Prayer at the door. I had no idea. But she guided me through all those things. And I remember the first thing I did for myself, I started buying flowers for myself every week, and I'd put them next to my bed. It was like the first thing of beauty that I had actually found, and it was something that was so important to me. I was pretty like a nun at that time. I mean, I wasn't, you know, inviting people over. So the flowers were for me. And little by little, I realized I began to get better. And I think in AA, each year, we have a different set of problems. I think when the problems disappear, it's time to die. But I think each year we start. My first year, because I was a Los Angeles person, was horrible car problems. Second year was house problems. They're always relationship problems. But they always tell us, don't get involved your first year. And they don't mean to protect the newcomers, to protect us. I remember being at a party one night, and I was dating some newcomer, and Peter N. was there watching his newcomer, and we were like parents at a children's party, you know, making sure they didn't do anything wrong, didn't get away from us for a minute. So little by little, I learned how to live a life, and when I get really panicky, I know how to take care of myself so I can cover it out there. I come here to learn the lessons that I can use out there. In the beginning, I had no idea how to make a friend, and Jeannie said to me, to be a friend, you've got to learn how to do it yourself. She said, people come up to you, they say, how's your dog, how are your children, how's your business, and then you walk away. You have to pretend interest in them too. You have to say, and how's your dog, and how's your business, and how are your children, and then sigh sagely every once in a while. She said, you just stare. You got to look down and maybe cough like that, and then look back instead of this stare that people just run the other way. So little by little, I began to get better. I began to sponsor people. At first, I had this ego. A lot of us get it with sponsoring. And I had all these really cute young girls, and they were always getting married and divorced and having affairs. And they'd come to my house on Monday night before we went to, I hope I'm not talking too long. No, you're going to do this. Okay. They would come to my house, and we'd have this special meeting where we'd have Brie and Perrier, and they'd tell all their problems. And the first time I remember, I heard this one girl, there were about 5 of them, and she was talking about this man she was having an affair with. And then another one started talking about this man she was having an affair with, and I thought, oh my God, they're having an affair with the same man. He's used different names with them, but somehow in my little brain it clicked. And I thought, no, this is time to get back to regular meetings. You can have these people over, but you cannot play God. But I always felt that I was too sick to ever get another husband of my own. I'd had one husband, I'd not been a great wife. I'd had a lot of boyfriends, and I thought maybe God was just protecting you men from me. But I went to a singles party one night in Los Angeles. It was friends of mine I'd gone to high school with, and we truly were looking for new husbands. We called ourselves Los Amigas, but it was desperados. And I went to this party, and a guy came up to me, and he said, I heard you speak last night in AA. And I thought, oh my God, this wasn't an AA party, but I thought, he was Italian. I really loved Italian men. He was in AA, and I thought, and said actually to God, you know, through myself, if this guy doesn't have serious mental problems, let me have him. And we went for a walk the next day on the beach. We were both living in New York, actually, and we were both back visiting our kids for Christmas. So anyway, he came back to visit me about a couple of weeks later in New York. He was back there, and he came. I had that tuna surprise that I'd had the last night of my drinking for him, and I've never been in the kitchen since then. We just got along beautifully, and we had 5 kids. I'd always wanted an Italian husband and 5 kids, and now I had the opportunity. But I had to propose to him. A lot of us do, I think. And we got married. And so I've had helped raise his children in addition to my own, so there are 5. And we've had a wonderful life. Every morning we have a meeting in our bed where each of us talk for 5 minutes. And there's supposed to be no crosstalk, except there always is. But I'll tell my stuff, and then he'll tell his stuff, and then we get up for the day. And I couldn't have done this any sooner. I had a lot of looking around to do and a lot of pain. I think pain is a touchstone, at least for me, of growth. And I had to really look around. My life is so good now that it's almost as if I hope nothing happens, because I have a wonderful life. And yet, I know I've done the homework along the way. And my own house, I think, is in order. Thank you.
Our second panelist is Mark.
My name's Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's really good to be sober. And if you'd have told me years ago when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous that I would be at the powwow in a coat and tie and sharing in front of people, I would have said, hell no, I wasn't. But like the lady shared, you know, it's just doing what Alcoholics Anonymous asks you to do. And, you know, this is a long way from a guy who used to sleep in garages and basically had nowhere to really call home. I was the type of guy, I just ran the streets and laid my head wherever I stopped, you know, and you know, it's what's really baffling about Alcoholics Anonymous is you know, I see people get like the light and the energy of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they're taking the steps and they're taking the action. And for whatever reason, the people stop doing what set them free, you know. And right now, this is really hard for me because I have a lot of people that I dearly love that, you know, chose to stop taking the actions of Alcoholics Anonymous in order to stay sober, you know. And some of that is in my immediate family. And you know, my whole family, you know, it drinks whiskey. It's just as simple as that. And nothing makes sense unless you're drinking whiskey. And that was just a solution to all of their problems, you know. And when I had first, you know, got sober and just was basically sick and tired of being tired, running the streets and drinking whiskey and doing whatever else that it took for me to get a drink, that was my first, you know, I guess you can say path on a way of living and managing a decent life that I've never experienced, you know. My sobriety date is June 25th, 1987, and I have a sponsor, and I go to meetings, and I have a home group, you know. But the first, I'm not going to say the first, but the one that really made sense to me as far as me questioning Alcoholics Anonymous, is it going to work for me? You know, is this going to work? Because I've tried numerous of things before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. But the first thing that made sense and just basically made me feel like this is going to work is when I did my fifth step. You know, for the first time in my life, I was in front of a man and I was honest. You know, for a guy like me, that's a hard thing. You know, and then at the same time, while I was telling this man everything about Mark, what I have done and who I am and all that, I was crying. Now, that was the first time I had showed emotion since I was 4. You know, I was just brought up in a family that if you show emotion, you basically get your ass kicked, you know. And but after taking that fifth step, you know, I knew Alcoholics Anonymous could work for me, you know. And but the main thing before that probably was being able to get a sponsor that I trust. You know, because it was so hard for me to trust anybody, you know, but I really trusted him. And then at the same time, the man, for some reason, pumped a little fear into me, you know, meaning when he told me something, I was going to do it regardless, you know, because for some reason, you know, he has so much love for Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was sober a long time, you know. He scared me. You know, and he just literally scared me. And when he told me to do something, I did it, you know. And after taking that fifth, you know, I went on to, you know, do 6 and 7. But then, you know, the whole clean house thing, the magic really came. And I thought I experienced all the magic that I was ever going to experience in Alcoholics Anonymous after doing the fifth step. But the magic really came at the 9th step, making amends. One of the hardest amends for me as an alcoholic to make is to make an amends to someone that you feel you don't owe an amends to. You know, I mean, that's a tough deal. You know, and my sponsors told me that I owed my old man an amends. And to top that off, my old man lives in Vegas because the whiskey's cheap and sometimes it's free. But to make an amends, he said, get on a plane by yourself and go first thing in the morning and catch him sober. That was a hard thing to do. The whole flight there, I was just talking so much smack about my sponsor, you know. But the magic happened. What happened was I made amends to a man that I felt I did not owe an amends to. And a funny thing happened. I was starting to share from the heart to my father. And I didn't plan on doing this, you know. And a funny thing happened. My father said, you know, I need a drink. And I said, I don't blame you, you know. I mean, you know, it's funny what happens when you clean house because all these things happen and you know, it all makes sense. You know, but before I went to take this action, nothing made sense. You know, and he took his drink and, you know, I actually cried. But right before he took his drink, I felt like he was going to cry with me, you know. And I'm not, here to say that now we're, best father and son and we go do sport events together and stuff, because it's not like that. But today I can call him on the phone and say, how you doing, Pop? Because before it was nothing like that, And basically my house is clean. I mean, and it's funny because she was sharing about, having a housekeeper and stuff. My house basically was a garage, and and if I had wall-to-wall carpeting, I was stoked in the wintertime. But my house is in order, and what I try to live like today. And I'm not a perfect person. I mean, relationships. Wow, that's a tough deal for a guy like me. But it just, I know what's right and I know what's wrong. I stay current with my sponsor. I don't bullshit my sponsor, because he's basically, he's not my higher power, but he's a man that's done everything I'm going to do. I've lied to him twice, and I could not look him in the face. The first time I lied to him, it was a Sunday. I lied to him. I come Monday at a meeting, and there he is, and I just turn away. I can't talk to him, But I'm current with my sponsor. And I'm honest with my sponsor. I don't keep any secrets from him. I feel that's very important for me, because when I keep secrets, I turn secrets into sickness. And, I could be a handful sober. Before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was doing NACA, whatever way, and I was a handful. I mean, literally, I was out of control sober. When my house is in order, I'm a good, decent human being today. People don't mind being with me, So for that alone, I'm totally grateful, And today, I'm just sober today. I'm just sober. I have so many people in my life that it's sober and something else. I just try and stay and just, I'm overpaid. I'm sober today. Bottom line, I'm at the powwow. I'm going to share one other thing and stop. Palm Springs is a funny place to come to, because all year long I look forward to this, right? And then when I get here, I'm in the sun for 2 hours. The sun beats my ass, and I can't go in the sun for the rest of the weekend. And every year I keep coming back, So, but like I said, I'm just really grateful to be sober, and whoever made this possible for me to share, I really appreciate it. And, to be able to sponsor guys and take them to the steps is just a gift. I never thought I was capable of doing that, And it's funny because one of my sponsors called me earlier today, and it was just weird because the guy is basically putting his life in my hands to a certain extent. And that's scary for me. I mean, who am I? I'm nobody. I'm nobody. But I do Alcoholics Anonymous, and I show up and I'm consistent. So for that alone, I have something to offer to people. Thank you.
Wow. And now I'd like to introduce Carol.
Well, good morning. My name is Carol, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Carol. And I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me the privilege of participating this morning. And thank you, Molly and Mark, for your shares. It's really great. Well, the answers will come if your own house is in order. Well, that's the truth, like everything else in the big book. However, for me, the answer is often no. And the other thing is the answers are sometimes unrecognized by me. I miss them. And I just want to address that piece of it, because that's problematic for me. Because, well, first of all, when I was new, a sentence like that, the answers will come if your own house is in order. What the heck does that mean? When I couldn't figure it out. And I was highly resistant to the steps, of course. So if they said that means work the steps, I didn't hear it. And when I finally heard it, what I heard was, if you don't drink and work the steps, everything will go your way. That's what I heard with everything. I thought that, well, that's what I deserved. If I didn't drink, just not drinking alone, aren't I just the best girl? I mean, nothing bad should ever happen to me ever again if I just don't drink. That should be enough. And then on top of that, if I work these stupid steps, piece of cake. Nothing bad will happen. Everything will go my way. And I heard that with everything. Like I remember when I was new, my sponsor said, dear, God loves you and only wants good for you. There again I heard, God loves you and everything will finally go your way. And I heard stuff like that over and over again. You know, just I got a cuckoo brain. It's like I can read, even when I started reading the big book, I could read the clear black print, but somehow I see purple and green and red and all kinds of other colors and all kinds of things come out, which is why I still have to go to meetings for one thing and why I have to have a sponsor. And my sobriety date is August 19th, 1972, and I do have a sponsor, and I sponsor, and I have a home group. And I need that because the cuckoo way I perceive what's heard. So anyway, what did I say was the first problem? Oh yeah, sometimes the answer is no. Well, it turns out that's a good thing. That's a good thing. In fact, often it's no. In fact, when it comes to my way or God's way, most often my answer is no. And you know, the funny thing is, when I was newer and still didn't understand this, I would be working my program, I thought, and everything. I think I have the perfect program, which doesn't exist, but I thought it a lot when I was new. And everything's just falling apart. And so I think, this program doesn't work. I must not be working my program right. I did not understand. Again, if I was working my program right, how could God say no? How come everything's not going my way? But, you know, then I started thinking, it's just like, you know, I was like a little kid that wanted ice cream for dinner instead of broccoli. And God's like saying no because he loved me. He said, no, you can't have ice cream for dinner. You're going to have broccoli. It took me a long, long time to understand that. But it took me a long time to understand a lot of things. I did get sober on Skid Row in Boston, where I was sleeping on a park bench, and it took me 6 months to learn the Serenity Prayer. So concepts like the answers will come if your own house is in order. Well, you know, way beyond my experience when I was new. I mean, I was sober 6 months. I remember I was thinking, looking at Gloria and Bob, I was at a potluck in their backyard. And I'd been going to those at their house for 6 months, and it finally occurred to me that everybody brought food to those things. I just thought they were nice people, and they just always supplied all this stuff. I remember distinctly, I was in the middle of eating a hamburger, and I almost dropped it, and I said, oh my God, everyone like brings something. You think? And they said, that's okay, you can just double up from now on, you know, and bring. So kind of see, so it's been a really slow process for me. And I have an expression, in fact, today, bad things, even bad things happen to me good. And that is the truth. Now, that's a whole nother topic, because good or bad is really our perception, or my perception of an event in my life based on my baggage or whatever. But it's true. It's like bad things happen to me good, where before I thought, again, things aren't going my way. This happened and that went into adversity. Somebody was talking about it this morning, that the steps are not about the way I wanted them to be, things going my way. It gives me the tools. It means there'll still be adversity in my life. Nothing will go my way, but I have the tools now to deal with it. It was really, really hard for me to accept that reality was the good, the bad, and the ugly. That work in my program was not the elimination of adversity. It was just a better way to deal with it, and deal with it on life's terms. And so today, I don't try that hard anymore to have my way. I get plans and ideas, you know, a little kind of, but that's why I have a sponsor. And then I have to stay open. Now, I can have goals, but I have to stay open to something else. Now, that's what I mean about when I said earlier about not only is the answer sometimes no, but sometimes I don't hear the answer. I remember many years ago I needed a job, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I did not want to do, okay? So I'm just earnestly praying to God, please give me a sign, God, any kind of sign. I don't know what to do, just any. And the phone rings, and it was a member of AA, and they heard about a job they thought I'd apply for. I said, oh, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that kind of work. God, any kind of sign, please. Phone rings, person number 2. Carol, there's this job, same job that you need to apply for. Oh, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that kind of work. God, why have you forsaken me? I need a sign. Anything. 5 people called to tell me about the same job. And I was getting pretty upset with God because he wasn't giving me a sign. So the 5th person, I also told them, no, I'm not interested in that kind. And finally I caught myself. I go, you know what? I've been asking God for a sign. Maybe. And she said, you think? So I applied for this job. I tried to blow the interview. The amazing thing is, I got the job, and I stayed on that job for 15 years, longer than any job I've ever been on in my life, or been anywhere in my life for that matter. So you just never know. So I've learned, like, through experiences like that I just have to stay open, that I can have goals and plans, but stay open that maybe God has another idea. And so it just goes that way. And the other thing that bothers me is that it's ongoing. I have this obsession that why can't I just clean my house and it stays clean? Okay? It's like my physical house, you know, it's just when I'm just starting to get used to it, that I have to, like, I can't just dust for one time for life. Out here, it's about every day, okay? Vacuum, dust, wash the dishes, wash the clothes, and they just keep getting dirty again. Everything, you know the deal, just have to do it over and over and over again. That was one thing I liked about living on the streets. I didn't have to deal with it, right? And I had a big resentment about that when I got new, having to do these things day in and day out, same stuff over and over and over again. And that's how my program is, you know. That's what, for me, like 1 through 9 is the big deal, and then 10, 11, 12, I got to do them every day, just like I have to clean my house. And if I keep it clean by working 10, 11, and 12, and I like to think of my physical house that helps me understand this. You know, if I do that, then when someone calls up and says, I'm going to come over in 10 minutes, I don't have to quick pick everything up and throw it in a closet and then not be able to find anything later. You know, if I keep it clean and keep it orderly, and then once a year I go through all my closets in my house, and if I haven't worn it in a year, it goes to a recovery home. And it's just have to keep it clean. And because if I don't, then I can't find stuff, and I have to do thorough inventory. You know, it's like at home in my house, if I'm looking for something, and I'm like, oh, you know, it's like I do the same sometimes when I'm trying to find what's wrong in my life. What's wrong in my life? And I'm frantically, what's wrong? Do you know what's wrong? Do you know what's wrong? And if I just stop and slowly, like at home, go through one sheet at a time, or pull out all the boxes, or if I hadn't cleaned house on a regular basis and I have thrown everything in a closet, open the closet, let it fall out, piece at a time. Same thing with myself. If I take the time to sit down and do it right, the answers will come. And that's just been my experience. The answers do come if my house is in order. I'm still not always happy about keeping it in order. I had company this week, and my house got messed up, and I was like, this is not fair. I have to clean it sooner than a week now, because I cleaned it before they came, and now 2 days later I have to clean it again. That's too soon. But so I still get like that, because I still have this fantasy I'll just do stuff like the program or my house, and everything will just be smooth. My path will be smooth. I mean, don't I deserve it? I haven't had a drink in 31 years, and now I'm working a program. Isn't it time something went my way? No. Thank God. Because things haven't gone my way, I have an incredible, glorious life. I absolutely do. You know, there is no way you can get from where I was to where I am, like most of you, just because doing the deal one day at a time, and staying open to God's will for me. And, you know, people say, well, how do you know when it's God's will? You know, trust me, I know when it's my will. So the opposite. It's just for me, and they say, well, how do you have to do footwork, and you have goals, and you have to do this, and you have to say, you know what? I don't. I remember once I was on a job that my first job when I was sober, and oh man, my brain was fried anyways, and I was a year sober before I could get a job. And when I finally got a job, it took everything out, the few cells I had left in my brain, you know, really taxed them. And so every day I said, okay, God, if this is the job I'm supposed to do, give me the strength to do it. If not, give me a sign for something else. And so everyone says, well, you know, God's just not going to knock on your door and give you a job. You got to do some footwork. I go, well, you know what? This is the best I can do, because God's going to have to tell me the footwork, because I don't know. Otherwise, he's going to have to knock on my door and give me I kept saying that prayer, and one day I was sitting at home, and someone knocked on my door and gave me a job. And it was the only job I could handle. And my time's up yet, or not yet. My time is up now, because I'm getting the victory sign. And again, I'd just like to thank you, and thank you for my sobriety. And the answers do come if your own house is in order. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carol. Our final panelist is Mike.
Good morning. My name is Mike. Yes, I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here this morning, and it's good to be sober. And Kelly, thank you for inviting me to come down this morning. A couple quick things before I start on the topic. I don't know if any of you drove down today on the 10 freeway like I did. If anybody was on the freeway and saw somebody that looked like me that was flashing their lights and honking at you, it was not me. I saw someone that looked like me doing that too, and I want to apologize for him. A very ugly disposition. I was embarrassed for him. And I also want to thank Molly. I never thought of inviting anyone to pose in a bra commercial. So the answer did come to me this morning. I got here about 9:20 after spending about 2 hours and 40 minutes on the freeway from Riverside. It was a very pleasant ride in. And I'm very relaxed and peaceful. You know, it's an interesting topic. If your own house is in order, the answers will come. And that's on page 164 of the big book. I went and found it again. And I think it's an interesting placement. You know, Bill Wilson, I always find him very fascinating for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, and especially his writings. When I was real new to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was a very bitter new person, some things don't change over the years. I've been sober 24 years, and certain characteristics seem to have stayed with me. But one of them was my attitude at the beginning. And I was in a hospital treatment program. It was in my third week there. I was getting ready to go home on a Monday or a Tuesday. And the last night I was in the hospital, I was sitting around planning my future, and it had nothing to do with sobriety. And there was a guy from AA in there, and he was babbling on about himself, and I was daydreaming, and like I have a tendency to do. And he was commenting about his life, I guess, and he annoyed me like most things did. And he said, "Do you know what? You want to know what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous?" And I thought, no. In fact, it annoyed me so much he actually caught my attention, and I don't know if he thought it was a cute thing to say, so he said it again. "Do you want to know what I found in AA?" And by then I was highly annoyed, and I focused in on him because I knew what he was going to say. I assumed I knew, and I thought he was going to say he found God or he found friends and goody kind of things is what I assumed he would say. So I was really irritated, and I was really paying attention. And he said, "I'll tell you what I found here." He said, "I found a higher degree of mental comfortableness." He said, "I found peace of mind." And he stunned me with those kind of words because I'd never had peace of mind, and the people that I ran around with never had peace of mind. And he went on to describe his life, and he talked in terms of a comfortableness that I just didn't understand. And I don't have time to tell you about it this morning, but what he described in the details of his life were actions and feelings that a lot of people, the people who stay in AA and work the steps, have, and what we refer to here as serenity, I guess. And I went back to my room that night and for the first time ever started to read the big book. And to this day, whenever I read it, no matter what my mood is like, there's a certain degree of comfortableness, of serenity. And Bill Wilson had the ability for me to write about that kind of a thing. And in that last page, on page 164, when he's writing in there, he's talking to people, I think, when he was writing. I don't mean to presume to know what he was going on in his mind, but the message I get out of reading him there is he's talking to people, and he's talking about, if you want the fellowship that we crave, answers will come to you. And he goes on to that last paragraph, and he says, God will disclose more to you and to us. And then and before the sentence we're talking about today, he says, he's saying, if you want to know what you can do more for the man who still suffers, ask God in your morning meditation, and he will disclose more to you if your own house is in order. Now, he may not have been just limiting that to about what you can do to the man who still suffers. I include myself in that phrase, the man who still suffers, by the way, so that it helps me out. But again, he seems to have always been able to simplify those kind of things. Now, here's the catch for somebody like me. If having my own house in order requires me to be perfect or good, which has always been the moral code I've failed to live up to, I would never get an answer. I just couldn't have an answer because I've never been able to get it together enough to hold it there. I couldn't when I was growing up. I've never been able to beat my conscience into enough of a submissive state that I could keep it quiet. And so if it required perfection, I could never have an answer. I don't believe our founders could have ever had an answer. And I know for me, I couldn't either. So here's the way I interpret that for me. I think having my house in order means that I have to be trying to work the steps. And the reason I think that's true for me, at least, is if there are steps that are the ones we call maintenance steps, steps 6 and 7, a daily inventory step, a step where I have an opportunity every day to stop and ask God to remove my fear, a step where I'm able to make a conscious contact with God, a time where I'm able to make amends all the time. That means, obviously, that I don't have to have done everything okay. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But I like the fact that I'm able to not have to be perfect. I mean, that was one of the reliefs for me coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, over the 24 years I've been sober, I have made some major mistakes. And by mistakes, I don't mean accidents. Sometimes they're purposeful mistakes, you know what I mean? I like to call them mistakes. It makes it a little nicer, especially when I'm standing up here. I've made some choices that I then immediately will try to pass off as a mistake once you've caught me. But the reality is this. The same God that was here for me, the same higher power when I was new, when I came in here and you all told me, it's okay. There's a loving God who's not so mad at you. Well, he may be mad, but at least he's a pretty nice God anyway. That you can come in here with all that baggage and there's ways to still live and your life can be okay. That all you have to do is just be willing to make amends for the things you did, to try to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, and answers do come. And when Carol was talking about the answers, I know my experience is similar to hers. Some of the best answers I've ever had, I don't recognize. In fact, I recognize them as incorrect. I mean, I am positive they're wrong. I tell God and my sponsor over and over, no, you don't understand. This really was wrong. I've spoken at some of your groups before, and you know some of my story. I work as a lawyer today, some of you may know, and I became a lawyer in sobriety. But that came about by real mistakes. I mean, I couldn't get a job the first year sober, and it wasn't supposed to be this way at all. And today I can stand up here and tell you I have the perfect job for me. I work as a district attorney. I'm a prosecutor. And I'm the kind of person with my background that I should be on death row, for God's sakes. I mean, I go there now sometimes to see people, but it's for other reasons. And the ones that know me, they should open the cell and just say, get in there. You're in the wrong place. But at the time when all those events fell together accidentally, I thought, or incorrectly, to allow me to go to law school, to allow me to take the bar exam, when I had to tell them the truth about my arrest record, when I had to tell them the truth about my hospitalizations, those kind of things, I was sure it was wrong. I was so pissed at God. I was so positive that life was treating me poorly. And then later I have that embarrassed feeling inside like, oh, if you'd have just told me, if you'd have just explained that here's the way it was going to work out, I'd have been the most gracious AA you've ever seen. Yeah. But what I'm saying is this. The answers do come to me. The answers come through you. They come through sponsors. They come through sitting at meetings and listening to people share their experience, strength, and hope. I was glad to hear this morning that an Italian sober man can find a wife. I didn't know that. I had them in the past, but I didn't realize, it's been 12 years, I didn't know you could still get one. You know, I'm a lucky person. When I was trying to decide whether to go to law school or not, I talked with Chuck C. one day, and I didn't realize how important a man he was, or I would have never spoken to him. But I was so new, I was too naive to even understand that. And I'd gone to his house, and I was talking to him about life and some things. And I asked him if I should go, and he asked me what my reason was. And I gave him an answer that I immediately regretted. I told him it was for self-improvement. And he screeched out that that was the absolute worst reason to do anything. And so I wanted to take it back and say it was to help the poor. Or to help people like Mark out. But it was too late. And he went on to explain that it was our business to do our Father's business, and it was his business to take care of us. And I want to live like that, but sometimes the real reason I do anything is for me. The bottom line is it's just for me. And I've got to remember on a daily basis that I need to try to surrender, that I need to remember that the purpose for me to be sober is to help the other alcoholic who still suffers, or to help people who still suffer. To go to work in the morning and to remember that the people I work with, that work for me, the people that I represent when I go into a courtroom, for instance, need help. My children need help. I need help. That I'm alive only by the grace of God so that I can be useful to other people. And that to the extent I can remember that, God gives me answers, and that my house is in order when I just keep that attitude, when I try to be a channel of peace. Because my nature is to be that kind of hurricane, that cyclone that goes through people's lives, not intentionally making them miserable, but when I'm so self-centered that all I care about is trying to find peace. I can be self-centered trying to find peace of mind, huh? Just trying to cause peace, I cause grief. I mean, sometimes the more peace I'm looking for, the more devastating I am. It's better for me just not to try, just to get up and ask to be useful. And the more useful I seem to try to be, to the extent I can let go of trying so hard to get things done, the answers come through still little places, through like that guy in that H&I panel that night that told me there's a way to live and to be happy, joyous, and free. Thanks for letting me share.
Our thanks to our 4 panelists and to all of you for attending this meeting. We have 2 speaker topic meetings which meet in this room. The next one will be this afternoon at 2:30, and the other one will be tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Since we are expecting a large turnout, we ask you to arrive early to both of these meetings. We have both AA and Al-Anon participation meetings at 1 p.m. Please check your program for locations of these meetings. Don't forget the long-timers meeting at 4 o'clock in this room after our speaker meeting. Everyone is welcome. The opening meeting is at 8:30 p.m. in the Crystal Ballroom. Be there early. The doors will open 40 minutes prior to the start of the meeting, and we request that you save only your seat and perhaps only one for our guests. After a moment of silent meditation, will all those who care to please join me in reciting the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back and work. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.